You've been talking very vocal a lot about the stimulated growth in China and how they've been pushing growth at any cost. Where do you think that's left the Chinese economy?
I think China is kind of the mother of all black swans. In a sense, it's when something if Chinese growth slows down and or actually declines, we're going to see very significant problems in China.
Right. Now you say black swan. That usually that refers to the Vitaliy book and about an unexpected event. If we're talking about it all the time, is it really that unexpected?
Well, I think China suffers from the false axiom.
Okay, the false axiom.
Yeah, that's right. So the false axiom is like, let me give an example of what happened in the United States.
Sure.
For 50 years, axiom is basically something that we think it's self-evident and doesn't need to be proven, right?
Right, okay.
So in the United States, for 50 years, housing prices never declined nationwide.
Right.
Okay, at once. So a lot of decision makers, including Federal Reserve, basically had that axiom in their assumptions, right? But it's not a law. It's just
right.
it's an observation. It's something was that was based on observation. So it builds on itself. So there was a lot, it created a lot more leverage in the system.
Right. We saw the banking executives say, well, we didn't when they came before Congress said we never really calculated in for national housing decline when we did our modeling.
Exactly. So to many people it was a black swan.
Right.
Okay? Not to all of them. Okay.
Right.
So China is kind of the same. The false axiom in China is that the economy will always be growing.
Okay.
And the reason for that, because their economy has grown over the last 30 years. Last 10 years, it hasn't had any cyclicality.
Right.
So the rational assumption is that it's going to be growing.
The line will keep going up.
That's right.
The way it has. You've talked about how there's basically been 3 periods to the Chinese overinvestment so far. What are those?
So we have from the period that preceded 1998, we had a decade of 10% growth, real growth.
And that was real growth, you think?
Well, no, the real means before inflation.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, after inflation. That's what I mean. The real is not.
Not that it was authentic.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So there was 10 years of growth, 10% growth a year, and the problem is when an economy of that size is growing at such a high rate, you have a lot of the government plays a very large role in the economy. The quality of the growth at very late stages becomes fairly weak,
right,
or low. So I usually try to use an example of Starbucks because people can relate to it.
Right.
But in 1997, Starbucks was opening 1.5 stores a day.
Right.
In 2007, it was opening 5 stores a day. So when you open that many stores a day, the quality of your decisions are going to be very become
You're
poor.
opening one around the corner from the other.
Exactly. So in China, we could see we could see some evidence of that, how poor the quality was when they built a city, Orders, in Mongolia for 1 million people, and it's empty.
Right. We ran a video at one point showing the empty city. So the decision making, in a sense, is that the opportunities for genuine growth sort of start to get thinner and thinner. So in order to keep up the growth, they start making these kind of errors.
That's right. Or the South China Mall, which is the second biggest mall in the world that is completely empty, and it's only second biggest because the Dubai Mall is the largest.
Right. But not the best comparison. That's
right. So the point is the quality of the growth was not at the late stages was not very good.
Right.
And then so that's the first period. Then we have the crisis, and I call this stage July. Okay, because during the crisis, basically Chinese economy, its growth slowed down from 10% to 8 or 6%, but it was still growing. And this is the economy that is an export nation, right? Exports were down 25%. The tonnage of goods transported was down.
But this didn't affect the overall growth numbers.
Well, well, that's exactly right. So but you have some statistics that basically disagree with the official numbers because the electricity consumption was actually declining for the first time in decades. Okay, so you start seeing that the officially reported.
How are they making those numbers if the other signs of economic growth aren't there?
Exactly. So this is the country that censors. The media. This is the country that sends people to jail for writing articles they don't like. So this is the country that can fudge the numbers as well.
Right. So now the third stage.
And this is kind of the end of crisis to today. And basically, this is the country that is afraid what will happen to its, to its political stability if it has high unemployment?
Right.
Because it has no very little social safety net. The hungry people, they don't complain, they riot. Okay.
Right.
So what happened since then? They had a stimulus package which accounted for 14% of GDP, and it was injected into the economy through a fire hose.
Right.
Okay, and China is kind of unique in this sense that we had a large stimulus as well, but our government has a control over a small portion of the economy.
Right.
They can create a lot of money and throw it into the economy, but they can't force banks to lend, and they can't force corporations to borrow and spend the money.
Not yet, I guess.
Well, that's right. So in China, their government, controls the banks, so it can force them to lend. And it's a third of the country's, is basically state-owned enterprises that it can force to spend.
Right, right.
And therefore, this amount, the 14% of GDP was kind of thrown into the economy at very high pace, just to keep the economy going. And now you have incredible excesses.
Well, what do you see happens next? Is China, are the problems that they're going to face a year out, 2 years, 10 years? What happens next in China?
It's very difficult to figure out what's going to trigger the problems. But one of the triggers I can think of is that either slow growth or, God forbid, decline of growth.
Right.
Okay, because remember, this is the axiom, the false axiom there that this economy will be growing.
Keep growing.
This is why. I mean, this is the economy where you have a 20% vacancy in skyscrapers, but they're still building more skyscrapers because the rationale is it's always going to be growing.
Unlike a place like New York, where we have a pretty high vacancy rate now in Manhattan, but you don't see a lot of cranes building new skyscrapers.
Exactly. So that's the huge difference. So if the growth slows down, declines, it's I compare it to there was a movie Speed with Keanu Reeves.
Oh, right.
And there was a buzz, and there was a buzz that if the speed drops below 50, it blows up. It's kind of like China, because this is an economy that has a very high operational leverage and high financial leverage, because the operational leverage comes from manufacturing. Okay, so if the GDP growth slows down, suddenly profitability disappears, and suddenly you start bleeding money very fast, and that's actually very deflationary as well.
So they have to hope that they have a Keanu Reeves who can somehow get under the bus and stop it from, let it slow down a bit before it completely explodes.
That's right, and remember, Keanu Reeves did not want to play in Speed 2, so he's not, so he's not available.
So China Speed 3 might be lead to a disaster.
That's right.